Everybody be cool. You be cool.
Sadistic Penguin Studios presents the At the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
And Tony Chalsa Burt.
I don't know this industry jargon, YP, MP, whatever, okay? All I know is that I cannot get a record contract. We cannot get a record contract unless I take these tapes.
It's almost time, so grab a drink, get your popcorn ready, and join the film discussion with two guys from Chicago talking movies.
We're back. Welcome to At the Show podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tom Yumper Garcia, and I'm with my other co-host, Tony Chalsa, aka Sugar Baggy, aka Mr. Burton. Burt, how you doing, Tony?
I'm doing good. How about yourself, my man?
I am good, my friend. I'm so happy it is the end of the week. Work has been very, very draining, and I know that has for everybody else. But you know, it's been really, really stressful for me. So I'm really, really happy to talk some movies today.
This is why we are here, my friend. We are here to let loose with some laughs and some insight on some really good movies.
Yes, sir. And we got a good one for you today. We have a couple segments, and we also have our big review of From Dusk Till Dawn deep dive. So I'm really looking forward to that. But with that, Tone, let's get into our regular segment of what we've been watching for the week.
That's a meme. And also, what were you just watching?
So, Tone, what you been watching, my man?
Okay, really quick before we get started on what I've been watching, at the bottom there, a couple weeks ago, we talked about Silence of the Lambs. Have you ever seen Silence of the Hams?
Yes, a very long time ago. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by Brian.
No. It's more I'm laughing because I didn't know why it didn't click when we had the actual show. But I always think of the movie because Billy Zane is in it, and his name in the movie is Joe D. Foster. It's, you know, so and Dom DeLuise as Hannibal Lecter. But I have not watched it in a while, and I had just thought that was hilarious. But the two movies I have watched recently, first off, real quick, is Hamburger Hill. If you have never seen this movie, it is a really, really, really awesome a Vietnam War movie. It's kind of, to me, I always thought it was just like Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now, and and like Deer Hunter. But Hamburger Hill is actually really, really good. It came out in the late 80s, and it has everyone in it from Don Cheadle to Courtney B. Vance to Dylan McDermott. Just a really good movie all around if you're looking for a good war movie. And my second movie I watched was Dumb and Dumber 2. I've seen this movie quite a few times. I like this one. A lot of people might not like this one. I know it's definitely not as good as the first one, but there are some really, really stupid laughs if you've had a long day that they make me smile. So yeah, that's what I've been watching. How about you, my man?
First, Hamburger Hill, great film, depressing film.
Yeah. No, not something. I make a joke, not something you want to watch after a long day. The opposite of that, but that's why it was like Saturday morning at like 10 or 11, I think it was, or something.
But it's a very good film. Dumb and Dumber, I was a big fan of the first one. I actually remember they made a prequel with two different actors for When Harry Met Lloyd.
Yeah.
Which I thought was okay. And then when they came back for this one, I enjoyed it. I just find it hilarious that Jeff Daniels is a very straight edge and straight man character, but he plays comedy. He did very well, for the original. So awesome. Two awesome picks, man. For me, I finally got to sit down and watch some of Loki. So I'm going through Loki. I know it came out last summer, but I have not had time to watch it with everything that's going on with work and family stuff. I finally got to sit down and watch the first two episodes, and man, I am loving the way the story is going. I love Tom Hiddleston. Big fan of Owen Wilson. You know, those two play their parts perfectly, and I'm looking forward to see it to where it goes. I haven't read any spoilers on it, so I'm going in, completely fresh. So far, so good, man. Have you watched any of it?
Yes, I have, and some say it may be the best show out of all the shows that Marvel has put out. I'm not, I think everything that I've seen, I've enjoyed at different levels. I haven't seen anything where I thought it was just straight up garbage, but I definitely think Loki is at the more top tier of the shows that they are releasing.
Yeah, if I had to, there really isn't any bad like Marvel content. I think for me, like Loki would probably be my first, and then I really, really liked WandaVision. I thought WandaVision was really done well. And I like She-Hulk. So I know She-Hulk got a lot of crap in the with Marvel fanboys and fangirls, but I actually liked. I thought it was funny. I thought it was closer to the comic book than when I read it as a kid. But I mean, people like what they like, but I liked it.
Very awesome.
And then to finish off what I've been watching, I watched a movie that's my regular go-to whenever I'm working or doing some stuff on the side, and I just throw it on for noise, but I actually end up watching it, and that's the movie Cyborg with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Horrible movie, but it's awesome because it has Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Moving really quick, when I went in 8th grade, when I moved to Indiana, I befriended somebody, and his basement, his dad had a really VHS collection. And I'll always remember walking up to it and seeing this movie called Cyborg, and never had heard of it in this point up until in 8th grade. And I would constantly, our friendship would be based upon me at school going, we're going to go watch Cyborg, but we never really ever watched Cyborg until later. But great action Van Damme, early Van Damme, which is the best Van Damme. So it's good. Yeah, for sure. And it had a sequel that actually starred another person that went to superstardom, and that was Angelina Jolie. I've seen it. It's okay. They're not great movies with them, but it's enjoyable to watch to me. I mean, but yeah, check them out if you haven't. I think Cyborg's on Prime for free, so you can actually watch that now for free if you have Amazon Prime. Very awesome. Great picks. Great picks from you too, my man. You have been fun with the picks. I always look forward to see what you've been watching because I want to see if I'm trying to I'm switching it up because to be fair, I always what was I watching? I finished Dusk Till Dawn, and then I was watching Road Trip. So what quite a back-to-back twosome before coming on the show tonight, Hey, I'm watching Road Trip, and I'm like, should I switch my musical pick? Because there's a lot of good music in this. Oh, and it's then Breckenmeyer. A lot of sorry, yeah, he does a good job in that movie. And Tom Green, it's one of the few roles Tom Green isn't he's weird, but it's not he's hilarious. No. And Fred Ward is the dad. Yeah, coming from is great. Love Tremors. We love Tremors. Yeah, Fred Ward. Oh man, I love Fred Ward. I can go on a tangent about Fred Ward. Oh, he's great. But that's what we've been watching. Let us know what you've been watching over at the show on the Twitters, X, and at Sadistic Penguin Studios on Facebook. I watched You Out, followed by Schindler's List. Wow, that's two polar opposites there, man. Back to back right there. Yes. So for our next thing we're going to spiel into, we actually have a special guest tonight for our In Defense of segment. But we want to bring her on to talk a little bit about a passing in Hollywood that happened yesterday, but was announced today, and that's the passing of Carl Weathers. But with that, we're going to bring in the great Keelin, aka Keelin 12-foot skeleton from Razzball, and a big movie nerd.
Big movie nerd. Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you for coming on. It's a sad way to kick it off.
Yeah, but we've all been impacted by Carl. Carl passed away at the age of 76 yesterday. Just some feelings, guys. What are your favorite Carl Weathers movies, or when's the first time you saw Carl Weathers on TV?
Oh man, I guess I'm trying to remember what the first time was. I honestly think it might have been when he was Chubbs and Happy Gilmore. But I love him most in Rocky IV, even though he's not in it long. Sorry for the spoiler.
Oh man, you're ruining a lot of people that haven't seen the movie.
They have to watch it now.
What about you, Tom?
For me personally, there's a couple different things, but this is, I think, my introduction right here.
Dylan! You son of a bitch.
that is right there. I think my introduction to him. Predator probably I would go with as my favorite. But my dad would always watch this movie, and I posted about it earlier. It was called Action Jackson from 1989. And Carl Weathers, Coach, was a great bad guy in that. But it was cool because he was the star in it, where in Rocky, he isn't the star. He's great in Rocky, but he's,
Yeah, and that was his only starring role, from what I understand. Like his lead role was Action Jackson. Unfortunate. I happened to see him in Rocky. So growing up, my dad and I used to watch boxing. Boxing was really predominant in my house. Julio Cesar Chavez was like, me being Mexican, was like one of the biggest boxers when I was growing up. So we would watch every fight we had with him. Of course, that led to boxing movies. The Boxer with Daniel Day-Lewis. I've seen Rocky was one of my favorite movies, and still is one of my favorite movies growing up. So Carl Weathers, of course, playing the Apollo Creed character based off Muhammad Ali, was like, I was just mesmerized by how close he was to the actual character, the actual person, the way he played him. And then, of course, Predator. I still remember, like, it's the goriness of how he ends up, meeting his end in Predator with his arm getting turned off. It's just
the arms.
Yeah. And then, like, I remember watching it as a kid, and like it's still shooting, and I'm like,
the way he turned,
like, is that real?
The camera too, and it's like that. I don't know if that would be your natural reaction, but great stuff. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Happy Gilmore. I mean,
damn alligator ripped my hand off.
Oh yeah,
he's losing limbs a lot.
Yeah, he lost his arm and his hand. But R.I.P. to Carl. Like, I'm so happy he at least got some of his roses. He kind of came back, had a resurgence with. He was in Arrested Development.
Yeah, and
then he went and did the Mandalorian, which he played a predominant role in there. So I want to see how they're gonna proceed with his character. I hope them to give him a nice send off. And he was actually in the Gronk commercials for the Super Bowl kick that nobody cares about. But he was, but yeah, he was. But R.I.P. to Carl. Such a good dude. Like, I'm sad to see him go. And like, as we get older, I noticed that a lot of people that we grew up with are kind of going. So it's a sad part of movies.
Yeah, and you just don't know when you're at work or anywhere where, unfortunately, like this one, someone sent me a text and I told you, it just said Apollo. And then you're like, you should pull up a picture. We should really honor Carl tonight. And I was like, that's what Apollo meant. Now it may all make sense because I was too busy. But yeah.
Yeah. Poor Carl, man. But RIP to one of the great characters that our childhood has known, with Chubbs and Apollo Creed.
Definitely.
But with that, let's get on to talking to Miss Keelin here. So Miss Keelin, you have a movie for us, and we'll go into the segment in a second. But just wanted to ask you just a couple like introductory questions that we usually ask like our guests that come on.
Absolutely.
So I know you're a big film junkie like we are. What's your favorite film genre?
Probably horror.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty into it, and yeah, it's nice when you find other people who are, because you have a lot to talk to, and it's very easy to talk to them. But it's hard when there's nobody around that likes it, because it's like they really don't like it usually.
So what type of horror is it? Are we talking Terrifier horror, or are we talking like slasher, like Halloween?
All of it, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Whenever I was looking through things for the segment I'll be talking about, so much of it was horror. And yeah, it was a combination of like slasher stuff. I do stuff like Terrifier. I do like it. It usually doesn't end up being something that I watch a lot, just because it's a lot. I saw Terrifier, the last one, in theaters, so I think the Christmas one will be interesting too. But yeah, I think I watched a lot of Halloween growing up, and of course Child's Play.
Based in Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I have like Shudder, and yeah, that's what I feel like I end up watching when it's like, oh, I need to turn something on in the background. I'll turn on a horror movie. I don't know what that means.
Earlier bringing up like Creepshow 2. I mean, yeah, I tend to lean. I mean, I'll watch it all too. I've tried, like I said, to watch it all. But of course, with the more cheaper the quality, the less I tend to stay away. I'm looking for like killer clowns that look ridiculous, but like the script flows, but the graphics, but it's still stupid. Like, I'm looking for a lot of different things working. That's why like Lost Boys is something that I enjoy because it's not scary, but it's in the horror genre, but there's ridiculousness to it. But then, you got Child's Play, which I remember definitely. I was like 8 years old and my dad was working midnight. So he takes me to the video store and rents that and says, this is what you're going to watch. And it was a very scary experience, but I love it. I still love it. It's great.
I saw Brian's quote. We were talking about Thanks for the Ride, Lady.
Yeah. We were just talking about that earlier in the green room. So horror is like something that I am really into. It's what me and my brother grew up on. Like that. My mom's favorite holiday is Halloween. So we started watching as kids. I mean, we grew up in the 80s and 90s. So Halloween, Child's Play, Exorcist, those are like staples in our household. And then we got into the more obscure films like, Killer Clowns. And then there's Killjoy. There's a movie called Clown House that we watched.
Clown House, Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, it's an older movie. I don't really like to talk about it because I'm not the director, but
yes,
I guess a film that we watched back in the day a lot. The Thing, John Carpenter, Big Trouble in Little China, but his also has he's known for Halloween and The Thing, anything with horror that I consume. Like my brother still goes to the theaters and lets me know like the newer movies that come out. Like he was the first person to tell me that The Exorcist was bad. And yes, Brian, the Ice Cream Man. So there's two Ice Cream Man. There's one with Ron Howard's brother,
Clint Howard.
And there's another knockoff version, which is like really horribly done. That's low budget that me and my brother rented from the video store, Masterpiece Video on 47th and Ashland.
That's wild that there's a knockoff of that movie.
Yeah, it's so bad, but it's like
I need to see. For me personally, in my horror movies, I need to recognize one name in the credits because if I don't, that's when I'm like, I don't know. But I have seen good ones without. But that's why I like just one. Just give me one cheesy bad actor from the 80s buried and very at the bottom to say, okay, well, because there's just a lot that is released, like a lot of movies that are just like on Netflix that are just like. I don't know if I want to sit through this, but
me, I have Shudder. So as you can see, like I've done for 2 years, the 31 days of horror. So I've done 62 movie reviews for us.
Yeah.
It's never something that, I always go in, no matter who's in it, to see if it's bad, it's bad. But sometimes they're so bad, they're good. Like there was a movie about a killer turkey about Thanksgiving I saw. That was ridiculous. Yes, R.I.P. Carl Weathers, renowned acting coach. 90s Auctions, we just talked about him maybe about 5 minutes ago, but yes, R.I.P. Carl Weathers. But yeah, just horror is like really a big genre for me. Horror and martial arts movies are really big for me. But Keelin, would you say is like a guilty pleasure film that is bad? It's bad, but you love it. Like for me, it's The Pest with John Leguizamo. Me and my brother love that movie.
I'm surprised that's like a guilty pleasure. I feel like a lot of people like it, but
I know a lot of people that hate that movie.
Really?
Yes,
I love it, so it's good to you.
I remember being in a movie theater and we were something big that was coming out on a Friday and everybody was packed. And then the lady in the front's like, we're letting in for The Pest. And 3 people had to like scoot in between everybody to like get through out. That's what I'll always remember about The Pest. Great movie though. Great movie.
Fever Pitch of the Drews.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I like all of the RoboCops, like all of them. All of the older ones. I have like the trilogy on DVD. I only have like, I think 6 or 7 DVDs still, and I saved them because I was sentimental about them. And the RoboCop trilogy, the original one, is one of mine. But yeah, I like 2 and 3. I like all of the like political commentary in them, and also just like how they kind of go off the rails with like Kane and like Nuke and all of the stuff like that. And then Stephen Root is in, I forget, 2 or 3.
He's in 3.
Yeah, I think so, with all the kids. So I mean, he's in there. So
yeah, he's in the 3rd one. He plays the bad guy. Yeah. The guy turns on him. Yeah, Stephen Root. Yeah, Samurai RoboCop one. Yeah, it's part 3. There's actually a 4th one. I think it's called Prime Directives that was released like as a series, and they claim it's like the fourth movie. I watched those too.
I'll have to check those out. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, it's one of them has to deal with RoboCop's son. It's a different storyline.
RoboCop's son.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But sweet though. I mean, RoboCop, it's iconic. They just released a game for him.
It's great.
Yeah.
But Key, let's get into our segment of In Defense of, and let's play this little video for that. So, Keelin, what movie are you defending today?
I am defending the 1997 film Event Horizon.
Classic, total classic in the worlds of Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Classic.
Classic. Yeah, I feel silly saying this after like having a rewatch, because I was like, okay, I get why this is like this. But yeah, it has a 34% on Rotten Tomatoes, 35% on Metacritic, 6.6 on IMDb. And I was like, man, I feel like this one gets lost in the shuffle of time, where it's like, at the time this came out, the graphics were awesome. Now when you watch it, they're kind of weird. But for 1997, it was like mind-blowing. So yeah, I mean, that's one thing I think that hurt it. But I like the story. I like the twist. It's got a great cast. It has Lawrence Fishburne. It has Dr. Alan Grant. It has Jason Isaacs. It has Jolie Richardson. It has Kathleen Quinlan. And it's actually a pretty small cast. Like, I didn't really think about that until I rewatched it last night. And they hold it down. So yeah, and I think it's got a good soundtrack. It's definitely of the era. It's like industrial music, but it works.
Yeah, it totally does. So it's also directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who is fresh off Mortal Kombat to direct this movie.
Yeah.
So I think he did a great job with Mortal Kombat, and I know he took this one as kind of because he wanted to do a sci-fi movie.
And he kept doing sci-fi movies.
Yes, he did. He did the Resident Evil movies too. I think he's married to. He
is, yeah, Mila Jovovich.
Yes, he's married to Mila Jovovich. But it's crazy that he was offered this movie, and basically he had to turn down to direct like X-Men and then the X-Files and Alien Resurrection, which is Alien Resurrection. But it's kind of crazy. He turned down those movies to do this one.
Yeah.
One thing that I always hear about this film and watching it is Sam Neill, who I think is a phenomenal actor. They say he overplays his role a little bit in this. Do you agree?
Really? Interesting. I mean, he does get a little weird whenever we find out what's going on, and he does the whole like, where we're going, you don't need eyes to see. Yeah. But I think that's like the whole point. Literally, he's kind of like a demon from hell. So I would expect him to be a little dramatic there. He does do a weird scream, I think, in a scene where he's like visualizing his wife killing herself. He has a very like odd scream, but it's like, okay, well, his wife just killed herself, so it makes sense.
I have a buddy that if I was he was in the room here and I would just say the word Event Horizon, he would grab my shoulder and we would do the scene where Sam Neill's like, and we would be in high school, because what had happened was that my mom had taken us to like Woodfield Mall, and my buddy with me, and we left and went and saw this in Copland in the same day at Woodfield. And at the time, and I watched it the other day again, and we talked about this about a year ago, and you're the one who's really kind of talked me into thinking this movie isn't actually as bad as I thought it was a long time ago. But I'm also thinking when we were watching this, I mean, we were like sophomores in high school, and it's a heavy, heady movie that we were probably thinking we were just getting into like Alien, which is just like, this is like Hellraiser in space.
Yeah.
It's deep, and it's good because of the actors. I think if you have a different cast that aren't Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne, it might not hold up, but I think they do a good job.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to see Jason Isaacs. I feel like he's so easy to see in the like bad guy role. It's nice to see him in something a little different. But yeah, I agree. After watching it again last night, I was like, this is just Alien plus Hellraiser.
So it's funny you mentioned that because actually Anderson said that he pulled a lot of this film's story and like the visualization was from Clive Barker, and Barker actually visited the set a lot to get like his advice and whatnot, which I think you could totally tell it's like a homage to Hellraiser.
Yeah.
So Key, when did you first see this movie? Like, how did you discover it?
So I think we were talking about this before the show a little. I can't specifically remember. I didn't see it until I was a little older. And I honestly, it was one of those, like, as we were talking about, I enjoy horror. So I was like, how have I not seen this when I did see it? I think I might have been in my 20s the first time I saw it. And it definitely seems like something that I would have liked when I was younger. But I think I must have thought it was a like broadly sci-fi movie, which I don't typically watch. So I probably was like put off by the name. But then, yeah, I ended up watching it. And it was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Even though it's also very weird.
But that's what makes it, I think some of its glory is that weirdness, that Sam Neill acting. He's got his eyes all sewed up,
Yeah, I definitely think it's better than Daybreakers.
yes, it is. It is definitely better than Daybreakers.
I mean, that's terrifying though. It's kind of funny right now, but
it is in the movie, in the context, because the music, as you stated, was like, industrial. So it kind of reminds me a little, some of the music like in Grandma's Boy when he goes in that room and that industrial music is blasting. But this is like in this movie with like the face. I
Did it frighten you?
The movie's very hot to me. It's very like hollow and metallic. Like it's very empty, but in a way that scares you. And I think he pulled it off, what I think he was going for.
Yeah. And I think it does have like some nice twists in it.
Yeah.
I think one thing that it does become it was obvious early on that it's like this dude has a very weird attachment to this ship called the Event Horizon. Like this isn't right. So that's one thing I think they could have dragged out a little longer. Without revealing as much, because it was like something's weird with him. But
it would have been cooler in the beginning, probably, if he had like flashbacks of like dinosaurs, and then it was like a tie-in, like a Lost World, because he wasn't in the second one, so like that was it. Like he went to space.
So he gets up on hunting for dinosaurs to go invent.
To go to space. That's why he goes back for 3 because the space thing. But his eyes are all sewed up. That would have been.
Speaking of Jurassic Park, when I was watching this, I watched it on Amazon Prime, and it has that like little X-ray trivia thing. And one of the things that came up was that people get Samuel L. Jackson and Lawrence Fishburne mixed up. And I was like, what? They don't look alike. I don't think they look alike at all.
No.
And apparently like they've been standing next to each other and people got them mixed up. And I was like, no.
Yeah. Totally different.
Not at all.
Different acting styles.
Yeah.
I think actually, to be honest with you, I think Lawrence actually does more of a Boys in the Hood like performance in this film, as being more direct and more like concrete with everything. He's kind of a dick.
He is kind of a dick. Yeah.
But he's the lieutenant, I believe. But funny thing you say that, you wish they would have spent more on the story. Just doing a little research on the film. The original, cut was 1 hour and 30 minutes, which they trimmed down. And when the movie didn't do so well at the box office, Paramount, told him, the executive told him, we're sorry, it didn't do too well. We didn't promote it correctly. So how about you go and make a director's cut? Well, the way the film was stored back in the day, it wasn't stored like very well. So he only could find certain aspects of his original cut, and he really couldn't make it a director's cut. So he had to show like storyboards as bonus features and stuff like that. And this actually has a tie-in too with the great Kurt Russell, who was in Soldier, the next movie that W.S. Anderson would direct. And he was kind of down about the film. And, Kurt Russell told him, quote, forget about what the movie's doing now. In 15 years' time, this is going to be the movie you're glad you made. And that's kind of cool that he told him that, because think about Big Trouble in Little China. Everybody hated it. And now it's like a big cult classic. Yeah, it's an iconic movie. And he said movies are movies. He always says movies are movies. You roll the dice and you see what happens. And this is the same thing for this movie. And to answer a question that Brian had asked, which is better, Event Horizon or Sphere? In my opinion, I think Event Horizon is better. Sphere is a very, very good book. I don't know if you guys have read it. It's a very good book. The movies with Dustin Hoffman, it wasn't as great, but the book is extremely good. If you guys haven't read that one, I would definitely check it out. It's about basically a sphere where you go in and knows everything, all your fears, kind of like this movie, but more in depth. Event Horizon, I think, doesn't get the praise it should. It's not the greatest horror movie by any standards, but it's enjoyable.
I buy the book in high school, and I'm saying I read it. It's one of the best things I've read at the time. The movie comes out, I go to like a matinee. You know, I'm like in high school. Nobody goes to this Sphere movie. It was a big letdown compared to the book. A really big letdown. So I'd go with Event Horizon.
Yeah.
I haven't read the book. Yeah. I've seen the movie. It was good. I mean, it was similar-ish. But
I gotta watch it again though, because again, I'm going back to a long time ago, my review of it, and I tend to look at things differently now than then. So,
oh, for sure. I mean, and like Brian says, the funny thing is because Samuel L. Jackson's in Sphere, so they could have been mixed up. So, but yeah, I like the book better. It also depends on what you guys like, you know, your opinion on movies. But I just thought the book was better, and I think I enjoyed Event Horizon more.
Yeah, I feel like with most books to movies in like the horror genre, you really miss out on a lot of the subtle things, like the characteristics where you can kind of like empathize with the character, even if they're bad, or like. Yeah, I think it's like with Stephen King, if you read a lot of his books, there's just so much more detail. And then when you see the movie, you're like, you know things that make it better. But like if you hadn't read the book, you would miss out on a lot. I feel like The Shining, I feel like the book is so good. And I mean, the movie's iconic, but you miss so much of Jack Torrance and him as a person. You just see him as a crazy mean dad, and yes, he was also that in the book, but they give you like more conflict for the characters in the book. So
yeah. And have you seen Dr. Sleep?
Yeah.
Have you read the book?
I have not read the book.
So
no, I haven't.
We discussed like Dr. Sleep on episodes before, and me personally, like Dr. Sleep the movie is the closest thing I think to the book that I've seen from Stephen King. And I actually would say it's maybe a little better the movie is than the book, because he does turn around. It's just a few things in the movie turns around a few things in the book, but like that's probably like his best adaptation. That, and I would say like the first It was good, and then It Chapter 2 they switched around a lot of stuff.
They did.
You know, even in the first one with the characters, which I was like not a fan of, but yeah, I totally get what you're saying about like books and movies. I wish they would put the detail in there, but then again, if they did that, like movies would probably be like 4 hours long.
Yeah, that is true.
Complaining about them.
Yeah, and I think there's just some things you can't get across. Like you can get a lot across visually, but some things you can't easily.
True.
Sam is checking in from Disney World and says, "Is this movie about drunken college escapades?" No, it's not. But the movie we're going to review tonight has drinking in it.
There's an orgy scene in Event Horizon. It's horrific.
If
you want to call it an orgy, like it's like eating people's arms.
It's like a weird cannibal orgy. They're like, yeah, it's weird.
Yes, the miniseries is very good too. With what's his name, Gary Sinise of The Stand. That's one of my favorite books, The Stand. Like I read that one a couple times. That's like I don't know, like 600 pages, but it's very good. That and It and The Stand are my two favorite books from King.
Great stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But Miss Keelin, thank you so much for coming on for this. I know we're going to have you on again because you are a plethora of knowledge with films, and I like your picks that you were telling me about later. So we're definitely going to ask you to come on again.
Tony was like, what? Cool. Yeah, I love being here. This is fun. I like to nerd out with you guys. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much for coming on. Do you have anything to plug?
Well, you guys can always find me on Razzball. My article I write comes out every Saturday. Comes out really late, but then they post it like about it on socials the next day. So I always appreciate a like, comment, etc. as long as they're nice, because if they're mean, then I'll really internalize it and be very sad. But yeah, you guys can always find me there. So thanks again for having me.
For sure. Thank you so much, Keelin. Have a great night.
Yeah, you guys too. Bye.
Bye. So be sure to follow Keelin over at Razzball, and thank her so much for coming on. Great pick. When she was telling me her pick, Stone, like she has a bunch of them that she's like horrors are her big thing, and she was telling me like, oh man, like, well, we have to have you on again because in defense stuff are great. But
some really, really good stuff. You know, a long time ago when I was doing something different, you know, and she came on and she could talk about killer clowns for 45 minutes. That's what's awesome. You pick a movie and she enjoys talking about it. So it's really awesome. Very cool.
For sure. We should have her on, like maybe do some horror stuff with her, maybe like a whole episode. Please. She's just talking to a plethora of knowledge with movies. And
you know, I've talked to you multiple times before on how working in horror stuff like tonight, you know, this is kind of horror what we're doing tonight.
Yes, sir.
It's going to be good.
For sure. So, Tone, we are going to go into our main event of the evening. We're going to go into From Dusk Till Dawn. So this movie I saw maybe, when I was out maybe 11 or 12. It was released in 96. So when was the first time you saw From Dusk Till Dawn?
Oh, my friend, I think of this story. You know, I remember you said something to me a couple episodes ago. You said something about stories, and I got stories. And this story is a good one because I was actually telling Katie at dinner tonight. There was a theater. It was no longer around, but inside the theater had a Taco Bell. And I'll never forget, my dad took me and I got my usual order of 2 chicken, 2 steak, and 2 beef. And I sit down in the theater with my hot sauce, and this is 1996. I think, you know, this is it right here. And the movie starts, and I'll never forget looking over at my dad's face when that opening song hits, and he's bobbing his head like it's like a concert, and he's laughing. And honestly, it was like being at a rock concert, man. And that's what I think of this movie is it's really, really good on dialogue. It's really good on fun. It reminds me of why I liked movies in the first place a whole long time ago, pretty much.
Totally, man. Like you couldn't have said it even, any better. Like this movie, to me, this movie is 2 movies in one.
It is, yeah.
And it's masterfully done. It's a movie that I don't think gets enough, praise for the way it's done. Because the way we're gonna go into the film breakdown, in our second segment, but just the way it starts off and then eventually, builds to then the meat and potatoes of the film, and then a climax with the ending. It's done very well, and it's shot in Robert Rodriguez. The way he shoots his film in close-ups. It has a great script from the mind of Quentin Tarantino. As well as him acting in it. George Clooney, who was at the time was like only known for ER, and also he was Booker on Roseanne. And the reason I say Booker is I make fun of that is because he had white bowling shoes. I mean, my brother always laughed about that.
If you would have asked me right now what was his name on Roseanne, I would have told you Booker, because my mom always watched Roseanne, and I remember him as Booker before this, and ER too before this. I also remember really funny at the same time. A lot of people would go to the barber and they would say, "Can I please have the Clooney?" Because like his haircut was the style when he was around at this time. And I'm looking at it now, and it's just literally combed forward a little bit, but they give me the Clooney.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, he actually cuts his hair with a Flowbee. There's an interview of him talking about how he bought a Flowbee and he still cuts his hair with it.
Flowbee, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
But this is gonna be a fun one to talk about. Let's go straight into our development of the film.
In
my thoughts, I use the technique of positive visualization.
So the idea of the film was first made up by Robert Kurtzman, who is a co-founder of the KMB EFX, a famous Hollywood makeup and special effects company. Kurtzman wanted to have a vehicle basically to show his, gifts and talents as an effects person. So he wanted to write a film that could basically show that off. He wrote an outline for the film, and then he wanted to find a screenwriter to help him come to the concept. His good friend at the time told him about this screenwriter that he knew, and his good friend was David Goodman. And Goodman basically said, "Hey, I know this young kid who's an up and coming guy. He's not really well known, but I'm pretty sure he can probably do something for you in terms of writing a screenplay." And the person he was talking about was a guy who worked at a video store by the name of Quentin Tarantino, which is crazy because
that's so crazy.
Yeah, Quentin's known as the king of dialogue, which we'll get to as iconic about this particular script. But he basically met Quentin, and Quentin showed him actually some scripts he had been working on. One was True Romance, the other was Natural Born Killers. Kurtzman loved the scripts. He's like, man, this is awesome. He goes, how about I hire you for $1,500 to write me a screenplay and script for this film? And this was actually Tarantino's first screenplay job in Hollywood, his first big time job. So it was pretty cool that this was his first gig. They also made a deal because he knew that Tarantino wanted to do the film Reservoir Dogs. Now, back in the day, Tarantino had the vision to just $15,000 to just shoot the film himself. But until Harvey Keitel saw the script, and then the rest is history. Well, Kurtzman told him, "You write this script for me, and I'll do the FX for Reservoir Dogs, that ear scene. I'll do it for you for free." What? So the ear scene from Reservoir Dogs is because he wrote the script for From Dusk Till Dawn. Now, this, of course, was prior to in the early 90s. Reservoir Dogs came out. Nobody would touch this film because they thought the film was too violent and vulgar, which it is. Tarantino eventually went on to go sell Reservoir Dogs and shot off like a rocket, selling of True Romance and then Natural Born Killers. And then came this little film called Pulp Fiction, which he wrote and directed. And when that popped off, people were all over Quentin Tarantino. They wanted everything from Tarantino. They wanted his scripts. They wanted him to direct. Universal Studios was actually interested in this film as a sequel to Demon Knight and to be part of the Tales of the Crypt trilogy. But they passed on it to make Bordello of Blood. And that's funny that Bordello of Blood's mentioned because there's somebody on Twitter when you post these great polls who's talking about Bordello of Blood the past couple times. And he's like, can I still watch the first Tales Crypt and watch Bordello of Blood since it's a movie of the day? Which I think is funny. Bordello of Blood has Dennis Miller in it, and it's not that great of a sequel, but it just cracks me up.
Bordello of Blood, again, it falls into the cheesy horror that it's got Corey Feldman in it. It's of course it's not at the level of this, but because I think I got to see it in the movie theater, just like Demon Knight and this. So it's very lucky that I was able to see a lot of these in the movie theater to say, and at the age where you're like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah, man. Totally. But with this, so we had the script is picked up by Miramax, and they're looking for a director for this. So according to Quentin Tarantino, Rennie Harlan and Tony Scott of the great films True Romance, and were the first directors who showed interest in directing the film and then kind of tapered off. When it was sold to Miramax, Tarantino actually went back to Kurtzman and said, "Hey man, why don't you direct this film?" And he's like, "I can't. I'm working on other films. I'm kind of busy. I'm not going to have time to do it." So then Tarantino was like, "Well, maybe I'll do it. I'll do this as an in-between Pulp Fiction and Jackie Brown." And then he's like, "Man, I don't know if I can do it. I've been, pretty swamped. And plus I'm acting in this movie. I don't know if I can do all three." So he happened to meet a particular person at a film festival in Toronto, and that person's name was Robert Rodriguez, who was there showing his film at Mariachi while Tarantino was promoting his film Reservoir Dogs. After this meeting, they began to bounce ideas off each other, and they became very, very close friends and will go on to work together in films after this, with Tarantino even appearing in the smash hit Desperado prior to this film as one of the people that pick up the drugs and eventually gets killed and tells like a hilarious joke at the bar. So they would eventually go on to direct parts in the anthology film for Rooms, which each of them directed the story part of it. Tarantino basically showed Robert the script to this, and Rodriguez loved it and signed on right away. And of course, he was working with his friend, so he's like, yeah, I'll do it. Rodriguez has stated that he wanted to meld his version of this film with Tarantino's while also paying tribute to the horror genre, as horror was kind of tapering off around this time. We had Alien 3 released a couple years prior, and then eventually Alien Resurrection. So horror was kind of in this strange place where it was still trying to find itself again for a next horror hit. You had, Scream was probably the next thing that revived it from Wes Craven, and this is another film that doesn't get the love it should get, as kind of like rejuvenizing horror at the time. Would you agree, Tone?
I would definitely agree, and I would, again, it's revitalizing a genre in a cool and a different way. I mean, this is a different kind of vampire movie than I think vampire movies before that.
Yeah, totally. And Scream and this movie came out the same year, so like Scream's gonna get most of the praise, but like this film should get the same kind of praise in some ways. So as of now, we have our director set, we have our script set. Next, we're going to go into our casting, like who's going to play these characters. So the lead character of Seth Gecko was originally a role that Tarantino had offered John Travolta. He pitched it to him. Now, Tarantino is really known for trying to get people who are kind of like falling off or, kind of like in their twilight of their careers. And he wants to rejuvenize them. He wants to have them like get big again. So he offered Travolta this role. And Travolta saw this role, and then he saw Tarantino like, well, I have this other movie called Pulp Fiction. Would you be interested in any of these? And he's like, I really don't want to do a vampire movie, but let me see what this Pulp Fiction movie's about. And either way, I don't think he would have did well as Seth in this film. I think Pulp Fiction was the perfect opportunity for him to become a big star again. And as I say, the rest is history. The role was even offered to Antonio Banderas due to being Robert Rodriguez's man from Desperado. They offered Steve Buscemi the role, Robert De Niro, Jeff Goldblum, Michael Madsen, of course, Tim Roth, Christopher Walken again makes an appearance as being offered the role of Seth Gecko. Can you imagine him as Seth Gecko in this movie?
No, I'm back to Jeff Goldblum. I remember a Saturday Night Live where it was Celebrity Jeopardy, and David Duchovny played Jeff Goldblum. It was really ridiculous because of his mannerisms, of course. But imagining his mannerisms in this movie, maybe honestly, I'd see him as Tarantino's role, maybe.
Possibly, yeah. The funny thing is, Goldblum actually critiqued that performance by Duchovny, and he loved it.
That's awesome. So
he's pretty hilarious.
That's great.
But also, they offered the role to James Woods, who, again, a person who was in horror movie, he did Vampires with John Carpenter, another great actor, crazy person, but great actor. And they all couldn't do it because of scheduling conflicts. Joseph Pilato was actually cast as Seth. Now, Joseph Pilato is actually, you might remember him from as Dean Martin from Pulp Fiction. He was in Day of the Dead as Captain Henry Rhodes. That's probably his most famous role. He was also in Dawn of the Dead too, as a smaller part. But as Captain Rhodes, who gets eaten by the zombies, and was a complete dick in that film. That's where he was from, and he was cast as Seth, and to the point where he was actually shown in the early trailers for the film. Before, this is prior to Robert Rodriguez. When Robert Rodriguez came on, they recast the role, but he was actually the original Seth. And you can actually watch his trailer on YouTube if you look it up. It's basically like, it's kind of like an audition, but say it's a trailer. And it's prior to the Rodriguez vision, but it's kind of crazy that Seth almost was somebody else. So Tarantino, now that they have Rodriguez on, they're still trying to cast his role. He was watching ER and he saw George Clooney, and he's the character of Dr. Robert Meacham. And he thought it would be hilarious to see a character that saves lives on TV be a person that sent people to the ER in this film. And he offered it to George Clooney. And the rest, they say, is history, as he accepted. Clooney, of course, added his own little element to the role. He ad-libbed a lot, and he also had the element of the tattoo on his arm, which was inspired by the film Once We're Warriors. So if you're wondering why George Clooney's character has a tattoo, it's because he thought of it and decided to do that, which I think is funny. Ritchie, of course, was always intended to be Quentin Tarantino. Tarantino, like I said, was originally going to direct and decided it was just too much for him, which is ironic that he wrote the script and he knew he was playing the role because Tarantino is known as the king of dialogue. But his character Ritchie has very little dialogue in the film. And by the time Quentin figured this out and realized this, he's like, shit, it's too late to do a rewrite. So that's why he doesn't talk as much. So it's ironic that the king of dialogue didn't even give himself enough dialogue in his own film. Harvey Keitel was cast as Jacob Fuller due to his past relationship with Tarantino for working on Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. He also received top billing for this film, which, as you understand, this is Clooney's first breakout role. Ernest Liu was cast as Scott Fuller. Now, Ernest Liu is kind of like an unknown actor, but the one cool thing about his character is he wears a shirt that says Precinct 13 on it in stencil writing. And this is a nod to our boy, John Carpenter, before the assault on Precinct 13, which they're trying to play homage to because they're both big John Carpenter fans, Tarantino and Rodriguez, that is. And that's awesome. And I just love how Carpenter is somewhere and related to what we've been talking about. Even Russell was in our defensive segment with Event Horizon. It's just cool how they keep coming up and like are intertwined with what we're talking about.
Great,
awesome stuff. Yes. And Cheech Marin, having a relationship with Robert Rodriguez and having done Desperado a year before as the bartender, was cast in 3 roles. He plays the border guard, Chet, who's the person that basically tries to get people into the club, and Carlos, the guy at the end they're trying to meet. Sex Machine was originally supposed to be a muscular guy and scarred, but they decided to cast a more slender character and deadly character. So there, as a character, Sex Machine, it was also supposed to be, so the role of Sex Machine and Frost were 2 roles that were switched. Frost became the more muscular character, while Sex Machine became the slender, deadly character. The role was given to the king of makeup and horror and a legend, Tom Savini, who stated,
awesome.
Yes, who has stated he had to do the hard job of watching Salma Hayek do the snake dance for 3 days. He said it was excruciating to watch that. Savini is also a horror veteran and a legend in that industry, as he did the Dawn of the Dead makeup and other films. He did Fluffy from Creepshow. In the crate, the animatronic animal is actually what he created. He's actually shown it on TV. He's done countless films, and that's why he was eventually cast, because they wanted to pay tribute to the horror genre while casting him. Salma Hayek was cast as Santiago Pandemonium, who, when originally reading the script, she said she was afraid of snakes and didn't know if she could do it. Rodriguez, being Rodriguez, was like, hey, we got Madonna about to take this role. So if you don't do it, she's going to take it. Hayek was like, okay, I'll do it. And then after she accepted it, she went to 2 months of therapy to get rid of her fear of snakes, which I think is pretty funny.
Really quick, back to Savini really quick. Have you ever seen a 1977 vampire movie by George Romero called Martin?
Yes, I have.
He was the special effects on that. So it's cool that, that's not From Dusk Till Dawn, but again, special effects, his special effects are all over the place, and it's cool. Him in the movie, just acting, because he's been on The Simpsons, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, it's like a character or something. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been at Aqua Teen Hunger Force. I mean, Tom Savini, like when you think of horror, like Creepshow 2, he's the creep in Creepshow 2.
That's awesome.
He also did Creepshow with the original one. He was the garbage man. Maniac, Martin, of course, he was Arthur in Martin. He has his own school for special effects makeup, and it's considered one of the best schools there is, and where you get real good training and real hands-on experiences, because he makes them do stuff that he has to do in movies to prepare them. So he's a legend in just that aspect. And also he's very hilarious. Like if you ever listen to his interviews, he's very, very down to earth, and he's very humble, but he makes fun of himself a lot, which I think is great.
And then you said Selma Hayek. I mean,
yeah,
the casting of her in this movie, I'm not underseeing anybody else in the role besides her.
And then again, this is right off her when she just got in with Desperado. This is right off the Desperado fame. So I think she did this, and then she did Fools Rush In, which is another movie I like of hers with the late Matthew Perry. So Fred Williamson was cast as Frost, a character that you never hear his name as, but he is in the film as Frost, and he was cast to being in the blaxploitation films and in horror, which is basically a African-American uprising of film characters in the 70s that were more powerful and making them lead, something that hadn't been done in a while. And Fred Williamson was actually, one of the first people to make them popular as a very strong African-American lead in action, which is what always, if you look at Quentin Tarantino and his history, Jackie Brown, he brought back Pam Grier, who was really big in the 70s, and he brought her back. And, Samuel L. Jackson's another person he constantly casts. It's just, when it comes to like the older careers, he tries to revive them, and he wanted to pay homage to all the great work he's did. So he cast him as Frost. Very strange character in the film.
Oh, yeah. My buddy, I'm in 7th grade, a gentleman came into class, and he pretty much, I'm thinking back to him, he was like Tarantino in 7th grade, but he would like rattle off to me, even in 7th grade, oh, Fred Williamson, he was in these movies in the 70s. They were called blaxploitation movies. And I'd be like, oh, and then Jackie Brown came out, and he's like, this is what I'm talking about. This is Pam Grier. And so all this stuff goes all the way back to me to like 7th grade of hearing how cool Fred Williamson is, and looking at those boxes and movies and the titles. I wish I can get those posters, and that could be my background behind me in the show. It's just cool, Fred Williamson, but he does a great job in the movie, though.
Yeah, he's his character. We'll go into like his scene, but like his character is out there.
Yes.
But yeah, I just love the way they came together with this cast, and of course Razor Charlie, who's the bartender, is played by Danny Trejo, who was fresh off his role in Desperado. Also around this time, he just discovered while he was filming Desperado that he was second cousins with Robert Rodriguez. Is something he didn't know. And then the role of Pete Bottoms, who's the person at the liquor store, was actually offered to Tim Roth and Steve Buscemi, but they couldn't fit it into their schedules because they turned down the role of Seth. So he tried to get him in a smaller role, but they still couldn't do it. So John Hawkes took the role. And when I think of John Hawkes, I think of two things. One, Deadwood, because he's the second lead in Deadwood. And I think of this movie with Keanu Reeves called Hardball, where he plays Tiki, his gambling addicted friend.
When I think of John Hawkes, I think of he plays Kenny Powers' brother on Eastbound and Down.
Yes.
And then currently right now, he is really doing a scary good job on the newest season of True Detective. But I mean, I've seen him in so many things. The things you said too, he's great in. What was funny rewatching this week was I knew he was in it, but just to see maybe how young he is compared to maybe some other movies, things I've seen him in. So it's awesome that John Hawkes took the role, over. I mean, I've seen Buscemi and Roth and so many awesome things that this little role wouldn't have made them any cooler than they already are. Where John Hawkes being in the role, I think, gives him a little more stake in something awesome.
Yep, and that's kind of like a nice little. And he's very in there for like maybe I think 15 minutes of the movie, if that's like too much. But Like he does a great job, and his character is actually pretty funny too. His interactions with Tarantino. But yeah, he's so young, and another actor that doesn't get enough roses, extremely well. And to round out the casting, we have Earl McGraw, who plays the Sheriff Michael Parks. More on him later when we go into our film breakdown. And then the band is played by Tito and the Tarantula, friends of Rodriguez. And they're also known, well, Tito Letarria is also known from Cruzados, which was in a film that you and I both love, known as
Roadhouse.
Yes, he's the person that sings "Don't Throw Stones" in the beginning of the film.
And I love that song a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the Tito and the Tarantula song. And so when I first found out that was both of them, I wish you would have saw my face. It was like I won the lotto. And it's just a guy making two songs from two movies, but man, that's so cool that he is in both of these.
Yes, two iconic, and Tito actually scored Desperado.
Oh,
he scored the Desperado film.
Music, man, and I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so he wrote. I think he had a play and says what tracks would be used for this film too. Just an awesome guy. Like I love his music. Back to the House, Love Built, and from Desperado is like one of my favorite songs from the soundtracks.
Great soundtrack to Desperado too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another great song. Well, man, I
love the Dire Straits song on there. Six Blade Knife. Yes. Oh, that's my song right there. But I know his recent movies haven't been as high tech, but there was a time where Robert Rodriguez and Tarantino were the same thing to me because of his filmmaking style, and he still is really good, but.
Yeah, I would say that Tarantino has kind of got more of the star.
He does. That's
like shining him, but also it's because Tarantino's films are limited in terms of he's only delivered like 9 films. He's about to direct his 10th. Rodriguez has gone in from all different, and like he's a person of a jack of all trades.
8 Spy Kids movies.
Yeah, Spy Kids.
I think if he didn't put that time in the Spy Kids, But that's what's awesome about it.
Even
he made them for his kids.
Hostel. He was in Hostel. He with Eli Roth. He wrote some of that. But he's done. He also did the double feature with Tarantino.
That was
so
Planet Terrors. I actually like Planet Terror more than Death Proof personally, but that's
I like them both, but I like Death Proof, and I'm pretty sure you know why. Because
that's right. I forgot.
My guys in there, but
that's for
I do like both of them though. But yeah. So both very extremely talented. Rodriguez just doesn't get the as much as respect. I don't say as respect. I say more of he doesn't get the spotlight as much as Tarantino because of Tarantino's
that's why
history.
I picked it this week because I thought he deserves a little spotlight. So that was very cool
for sure. And to round up, our development, there were some crew issues and also set issues with this film. The production of Dusk Till Dawn was set back a lot of times due to the exterior set of the strip club being burned down and had to be rebuilt. There was a bunch of dust storms where they were filming, and the film's use of a non-union crew led to threats of a strike. So Rodriguez is known for using non-union crew members on his sets. I don't know if it's a budget thing. He never really explains it, but he uses them for his sets. And this film budget was, I believe, $25 million. And due to that, it's very rare for a film over 15 million to not have a unionized crew. So when this came out, a lot of people were threatening to strike because how you're not using union crew members. And I am pro union, so I understand why. But it's just kind of weird that maybe because he was wanting to have the aura of he was coming from a low budget filmmaker.
Could be.
Maybe that's why. But it's really interesting. So that's our development of the film. Tone, like what stuck out to you in terms of like the developing of this film?
Well, for me, again, back to the casting, I'm always a big fan of reimagining. Like recently, this week on It's Getting Drafty, they were redrafting characters from Saturday Night Live and the roles of Star Wars. So like in this case, you just telling me all of those actors, I got the whole movies already played in my head with them in that role. It's always like that. So like I see Jeff Goldblum, I see James Woods. The problem is that I also know the way audiences are. So like would James Woods, because I saw Vampires, and unfortunately it's a good movie, but it didn't do the best at the box office. So like, would James Woods bring the people in for this movie? Probably not. Whereas Clooney, coming off of that ER run, was such a great casting that Danny Trejo, though, for me as the bartender, is always going to stick out as an amazing casting, because we'll get into it when we talk about the movie. It's just so great.
No, for sure. But yeah, I mean, you basically let us in, so let's get into the film breakdown.
See the arc? He starts down here. He ends up here. Where's my arc, Paulie?
So we're going to break down the film, and we're going to go through not every scene, but we're going to go through pivotal points within the movie. So the film opens up at Benny's World of Liquor, where we see Earl McGraw, who is a sheriff, and he's buying his usual liquor at his usual spot. This opens up, is kind of funny because we see him just bullshitting both Earl and John Hawkes, who plays the liquor store vendor, Pete Bottoms. So they're just bullshitting, and he walks away, and then we see the Gecko brothers, played by Seth and Richie, holding a hostage and scaring the hell out of John Hawkes. This kind of sets the tone for the two characters. You can see they're both ruthless in terms of, people you don't want to be messed with. You also see how more ruthless the other one is, more violent forms of violence the other one is in terms of Richie. And it also opens up an interesting aspect to the film, because the character of Earl McGraw, who's played by Michael Parks, is killed by Richie because Richie believes that John Hawkes was signaling to him to help him, which he wasn't. But in Richie's mind, he just wanted to kill the person. He thinks that he was. Michael Parks plays the character Earl McGraw, and this character actually appears in Kill Bill, Death Proof, and Planet Terror. So this film is a prequel this film's a sequel to all those films. Those all take place before this film because this character dies, which I think is pretty funny.
That's great.
Yeah. Another funny part is when Pete Bottoms and George Clooney are talking, Seth, he says, don't worry. You should get a fucking Academy Award for acting natural. And 15 years later, John Hawkes was actually nominated for Academy Award for his supporting role in Winter's Bone. So I guess he was a little Clooney-damus or Nostradamus there.
Good. Just a little bit.
So when the sheriff is killed by Richie, they begin to argue, Richie and Pete Bottoms. Pete Bottoms basically is saying, I didn't say what you're saying. And Richie just basically shoots him in the chest, to where he brings out his gun from a safe and shoots Richie in the hand, which I think is some really cool special effects, because you can actually see the hole through his hand as he looks at it. And they basically indulge in a gunfight to the point where George Clooney's character gets pissed and has Richie shoot out the liquor bottles behind him and setting it on fire with a roll of toilet paper. What'd you think of that whole transition there?
I thought it was because, again, the mouthing, and then he goes back. Of course, when I first seen it or whatever, I'm thinking in my head, how could the cop not have heard him in the bathroom having any kind of interaction for the minutes and going back? But he doesn't. He comes back out and he shoots him. But the way Tarantino's actually almost out the door when he turns around and gets shot by Hawks, because Hawks is going for the safe, and it's just the way he catches it in his hand is very, very is different in the movie.
Yeah, it totally is. I think for when I first saw this film, seeing this scene, you're like, am I watching the right film? Because this is a totally, like I said, these are two different movies in one. Like, you're starting off with a crime story, and you're seeing the character arc, and it's something that we naturally don't see in a lot of horror movies, is like a nice building of characters, and you're seeing what kind of people these two Gecko brothers are. You eventually learn they're thieves and murderers, but you see how one's aggressive in George Clooney, and his brother is basically a psychopath who either has mental issues in terms of, or he just wanted to kill him and made up a story of him mouthing to the police, which when they show the scene, he's not doing it. He's basically trying to get the cop out so they can let the two girls go that they're holding hostage. But yeah, totally, like, it just sets the tone for the film. And then we transfer into the drive as they're driving away. And as they drive away, Tarantino's basically taping up his bloody hand with duct tape, which I thought was hilarious. And they pan to the back and they show they actually have a hostage in the trunk. They go to a hotel and they meet this hotel owner who's played by Mark Lawrence, who's known for Diamonds Are Forever and The Man with the Golden Gun. And it's a nice little interaction they have between each other. He's like, "What the hell do you want?" He's like, he goes, "I want a room, old man." And he's like, "Oh." And he just gets and they go into the room. And here is where we kind of see like the dynamic between the two brothers and how they operate. Clooney tells the hostage this:
"Don't you ever try and fucking run on us. Because I got 6 little friends. We can all run faster than you can."
Which I think is an iconic, line. He holds the gun to her. And to me, like, Clooney was known for playing like funny characters, like compassionate characters. And I think he knocks it out of the park as playing kind of like a dangerous person in this film.
He does.
So after they get settled in, Seth tells Richie he's going to go get some food and kind of stake out the situation and see, how's the temperature of where they're at. Like, are they on them where they're at or what? Richie proceeds to go on the bed of the hotel, turn on the TV, and tells the hostage, "Do you want to watch cartoons with me or TV with me?" And reluctantly, she's scared of her mind after she was just threatened to not listen. But she was told by Seth that she would live if she just listened to what they were saying. She goes and sits like against the backboard with him on the bed. And we cut to the introduction of the Fuller family. But prior to this, we actually see a newscast, and we see a newscaster by basically interviewing FBI agents. That newscaster is played by Kelly Preston, the wife of John Travolta. And the way she got this role was Tarantino just offered it to her when he was doing Pulp Fiction. He was in their trailer, and he's like, "Hey, I got this movie I might make. You want a small role in it?" And she's like, "Sure." So he basically gave it to her on the set of Pulp Fiction. She took the role. And John Saxon plays the FBI agent. Now, you know who John Saxon is, right, Tone?
Oh, yeah. John Saxon he's Friday the 13th, correct? Not Friday the 13th, no. Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, I got too excited there.
Yeah, John Saxon is known for Nightmare on the Elm Street. He's the police officer who loses his daughter. She gets murdered. But another great character, actor that does not get
Enter the Dragon.
Yes, Enter the Dragon. Oh my God, I love that movie.
I know. If you are into martial arts, I mean, you gotta like Enter the Dragon.
He's also in a film with Clint Eastwood called Joe Kidd, a good Western.
Really good movie. Mm-hmm. Big Western fan, like lots of Westerns. But again, it's cool seeing those and then seeing them in this, a stretch between different genres.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess Nightmare on Elm Street and this are both horror, but different kinds of horror.
Yeah. So we go to the introduction of the Fuller family after we see the newscast, and we see our character of Jacob Fuller, played by Harvey Keitel, with his family, Ernest Liu as Scott Fuller and Juliette Lewis as Kate Fuller. Juliette Lewis was cast due to her friendship with Tarantino. She would also go on to be in his other film, Natural Born Killers, which are two totally different characters. But in here, she plays kind of a timid church girl, the daughter of Harvey Keitel. And basically, he's talking to his family. He's saying he's tired. He wants to go to a hotel. He doesn't want to sleep in his RV. We kind of get a little backstory on him, why they're basically out. He's basically taking his family to get away to Mexico to get away. His son and his daughter, he left his parish at church due to the death of his wife. And we don't know how his wife passed away, but he's kind of like losing his faith and just wants to get away for a little bit. We then come back to Seth coming back to the hotel with the burgers, which is actually Big Kahuna Burger, which is another staple of Quentin Tarantino films, which is, the Red Apple cigarettes, Big Kahuna Burger, which they have in, several of his movies as the characters are eating. He doesn't like to lose name brands, so it's kind of cool that they actually add this in here.
That is cool.
So when Seth comes back, he's talking to Richie, and Richie's like, he says, Richie, what happened on the TV? And Richie tells him, oh, they said they're going to catch us in 48 hours. And he just laughs. And as he's giving the burger to Richie, he grabs his own burger and he has another one in his hand and he's looking for the hostage. He goes, where is, the girl? And he's like, oh, she's in the room. He's like, well, what the hell is she doing in there? You got to keep your eye on her. And then he opens the door to find the hostage brutally murdered and assaulted. And I think this scene right here is a really good character builder scene for Seth and for Richie. Also, I love the way this scene is shot because...
That's what I was going to say, the way the film is shot. I mean, those other things are great too, but the way he shoots at this part.
Yes, like it's basically shot in flashes. So you don't see the body until the very end of the scene, but it's like as he's talking to Richie, saying what happened, there's flashes of like the bloodiness, the brutality of the scene. And this again shows Richie's brutality. It also shows Seth having some morals because he tells him, I'm a thief. I only kill people that need to be killed. I don't kill innocent people or people that don't deserve to be killed. He attacks Richie and eventually calms down and saying, is this his fault for what's happening? Why are you doing this? Are you trying to be like me? You think I'm a killer? Is this my fault? You think that's the way I run things? And it shows that character build with both of them. Richie's a complete psycho and Seth is basically, he's a bad guy, but he's not that bad. Which I thought was kind of nice to play the dynamic between the two.
Yeah.
Prior to coming with the burgers, he saw the Fuller family pulling in with their RV. They almost hit him with a car, which actually kind of cracks me up. While he's drinking a beer, he just looks at him and walks to his.
The way he looks at him.
Yeah. So he has Richie go to the room and ask for a bucket of ice for his lady friend.
What is this?
That punch is great. And then the whole, play back and forth. Oh, I have a lady friend in my room. Can you like this? So they basically go in, they take over that room, they punch him in the face, they threaten his family. He puts a gun in his son's mouth. His daughter's in the bathroom. He thinks of vulgar terms that she's telling him, which doesn't really happen, but in his mind it does. We basically George Clooney basically tells him, Jacob, listen, you see the way my brother's looking at your daughter? He's like, we need to get to Mexico and you're going to take us in your RV. And if you don't, we're going to kill you. He reluctantly agrees. And then we get an iconic saying from George Clooney as he goes to get Kate out of the bathroom while Richie goes to the car.
Time's up, princess. Here we go. Okay, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
And why is that iconic? Because it's from another film that was just directed 4 years prior, and named Reservoir Dogs, and it's said by Joe.
All right, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
Before they leave the restaurant in the beginning of the movie, when they're talking about Madonna and tipping, that's what Joe says before they leave. And I thought it was really funny. I caught that because I'm like, that's totally Tarantino. You could tell it's totally Tarantino writing. So he kind of carried over little bits from his previous movies. To me, it's hilarious that they had that in there. And I more and more I watch the movie again over and over again, the more little things I see. This scene right here is pretty scary though, because, he puts the gun in the child's mouth. And then when they agree, he's like, okay, you'll be, everything's going to be cool. You'll live. Again, Seth tells him you'll live. He gives them his word. Nothing's going to happen to them if they just follow him. And Richie's plan to take them to Mexico because they're trying to get away from the police and they're supposed to meet somebody there. So eventually the family goes and travels over, to the border and they get stopped by the Border Patrol. But prior to that, Juliette Lewis's character, Kate's asking, what's in Mexico?
Where are you taking us?
Mexico.
What's in Mexico?
Mexicans.
And that line always cracks me up because he's like dead serious, just looking at her. And then during that whole transition of dialogue, you hear George Clooney's character Seth tell him to put his retainer in, and he puts it in, and Scott Fuller is laughing at him, and he's like, "I grind my teeth," which is it's just hilarious to me. They eventually make it to the border, where we find our first appearance of Cheech Marin as the Border Patrol. When they first talk to the Border Patrol guard, they tell him, Jacob Fuller tells him, "I'm here with my son, and I'm taking him to get his first bull fight. See his first bull fight." But he hears something in the back, and he's like, "Oh, it's my daughter." He's like, "You told me you were just traveling with your son." He's like, "Oh, I met my daughter as well." Red flag. And as they're coming up into the RV to investigate it and inspect, George Clooney knocks his brother out because he won't shut up, which I think is hilarious.
I love that whole scene.
So describe it, Tony. Describe what they're like, how it happens.
So the guys come. First, Cheech is amazing in this scene because he's playing a total straight character. Even his dialect is different than in other roles. He goes up on there, and the best is he opens. All before that, they're jawing each other back and forth. And what's cool is by the time Cheech gets to the bathroom in the small walk, she's already like sitting on the toilet. He's knocked out into the shower, and Clooney's like just standing there, but like everybody's cool. And the way she says, "Can I get some effing privacy?" It's just such a great, because Cheech is just like, "Okay," and shuts the thing and then gets off of the RV. It's great.
Yeah, he's actually a really big perv in the scene. He looks her up and down, and then when he's closing the curtain, he's like looking. It's like so like it's like a straight up perv. But you could see Clooney in the shower with the gun pointed at her, and they eventually get by the border, which I thought was hilarious. Like, wouldn't you? I know there's somebody in there, but they would tell her to usually come out. They're going to search, but. This was back in the 90s, so I guess they didn't really care. And they are out. They are in the clear. He tells them, "Hey, you got to drive down this road, and you have to make a left when you get to a certain street and drive a couple miles, and we're going to go to this bar called the Titty Twister." And the first appearance of the Titty Twister, when you first see it, Tone, what was your thoughts about it?
What was my thoughts about it? It's like wishing that you were asking me where we were going tomorrow night, and I said the Titty Twister. Just the name, the way the smoke and the fire and everything. It looks, and again, back to that original theater experience. Like my dad looks like he wishes he was there too, and I'm only like, and I know that, and I'm only in like 7th or 8th grade or whatever. But that's what's awesome about the movie is that you get the first half, like you were saying, which is just like straight up road movie, cool shooting, great dialogue. And now we're going to slip into the second half, which has all of what the first half has, but now we're going to add the horror element to it. Just all around really good.
Yes. And I just got a message from somebody who told me, it's my brother who told me the line that Seth tells Steven, the son, when they pass the border is hilarious. "We made it to Mexico, you little fucking piece of shit."
Yeah, it's a great line.
But he's really excited. Like his Clooney is awesome in this film. Like he's hilarious. He has there's Clooneyisms in here where he, ramblers, let's get rambling. There's another line of dialogue I'll talk about that he says that's pretty funny. The Titty Twister is basically a bar with a bunch of bikers and truckers, and you see flames shooting out. You see the Cheech in his second role as Chet saying some vulgar things and trying to promote people to come in to come see the strippers. You see Clooney and Richie basically tell the people in the camper, "Hey, we're going to go in and we're going to meet Carlos in the morning. We're going to go in there. We're going to drink until Carlos comes. And then we'll let you guys go." And he's like, "I'm really happy right now." And basically he says one of his Clooneyisms, which is,
"So if everybody just keeps playing it cool," and I'm talking to you too, Richie, and everybody's going to get what they want. Okay, hard drinkers, let's drink hard. I'm fine. Come on.
Hard drinkers, let's drink hard. And I really love that line. I love that whole dialogue because not for what's said. entirely, but just like the hard guitar riff in the background.
Oh,
dude, this soundtrack is like awesome.
I got the CD when I needed the soundtrack, just like the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, because as you stated, I mean, it's got everything from the Blasters to ZZ Top to Tito and the Tarantulas to Stevie. I'm a huge, one of my favorite Stevie Ray Vaughan songs is Willie the Wimp. And you know, it's just a lot of awesomeness into the movie. In that regard is the music. It's great.
Yeah, and you know, it's like I said, the iconic scene. They go up, they leave the camper, and they go into the entrance where there's basically they meet Chet, who says some more vulgar things to them. He tries to stop them from going in to where George Clooney breaks his hand, basically turning his hand in like around, and you hear the cracks, and then punches him in the face. He falls to the floor to where he's like, do I check out now? Walks in, and I love when Tarantino comes back and is like, hey, how you doing? While he's kicking him, you like it? Good. And then he walks back in, and Chet's character is basically laying on the floor like, oh. And then we go in and we see the iconic look of the titty twister, which is basically there's strippers all around on pillars. There's strippers on tables. There's a band playing. You know, of course, Tito and Tarantulas playing. And the funny thing is about the band, which I don't know if you noticed this, Tone. Of course, we see Robert Rodriguez in the band. He was a good friend of Tito. And then we see a particular drummer. And you know who that drummer is?
I do not.
That's Johnny Vatos Hernandez. And he was in Oingo Boingo. He's the drummer of Oingo Boingo.
And honestly, if you would have just you saying the name there, I already knew who it was, because he's an amazing drummer in Oingo Boingo. I actually talked about the album just on this recent
episode. Funny.
That's crazy. That's really crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. They first meet the appearance of Razor Charlie, who's played by Danny Trejo, as the bartender. They ask for Seth comes up and asks he wants whiskey, to which the bartender, Charlie, pours a shot of whiskey and takes it himself and says, "You're not welcome here because this place is only for truckers and for bikers." To where Seth says, "I'm not one here." And this is where you show the character of Seth and his anger. And somebody comes and grabs him behind him. A bouncer comes to grab him to throw him out. To where Seth says, "I'm going to count to 3." And this is where Jacob intervenes and says, "Hey, you're saying this is for truckers. If you look outside, you can see my camper out there, and you have to have a Class 2 license. So I am a trucker." And I just love the way Trejo was like looking at him, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, yeah." So he's like, "Okay, bottle of whiskey and 3 bottles." He gives him the whiskey. And then he's like, "Hey," to be a dick, Seth asks him, "Hey, Jose, how's the food here?"
This is the best line in the whole movie, because I was about to ask you, is it right? Yeah, this is my favorite line.
Yeah, he's like, he's like, "How's the food here?" And he tells him, "Best in Mexico." Yeah. And he goes, "I highly doubt it."
We would always say that line. "Well, how's the food here?" "Best in Mexico." I highly doubt that.
Yeah, which I think is hilarious. And just shows like the play. They go back and like, this is one of my favorite scenes in the film is when they're drinking these with the whiskey. He gets the daughter to drink, and then he tries to get the son to drink. And Jacob's like, no, you're too young. But I like how he gives Kate her first shot and she takes it. And then he goes, "Okay, round 2." And she's like, "Oh, yes, sir, I'll have another." Because she's already feeling the effects of the alcohol. And then that's when he tells Scott, "Hey, you have to have one." And he's like, "No, okay, I'll try it." To where he eventually gets to have a shot with Jacob, who tells him, "Why are you being so mad about these people touching you? You won. You're in the border. You're past the border. Like, just enjoy being free." And he thinks about it and it's like, "I want you to have a drink with me." And he's like, okay. So that's when we have kind of like a bonding scene between him and Jacob. Not saying Jacob completely trusts him, but it's kind of like they see eye to eye.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, then we hear the introduction of the great Salma Hayek. And this scene, you know, the band is playing the scene Mary Had a Little Lamb. And basically it transitions to her coming out with the snake around her neck. And, you know, it's probably one of the most watched scenes in film history. I know that when they had this scene filmed, just like they did with Desperado, everybody from the set and crew showed up to watch it. it's probably one of the most, iconic scenes, I would say, like in terms of her career, which I think is crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean the music again matching up to the scene, does not get much better than that.
No, it's pretty crazy, like because as Santa Nico, the character she plays, her name actually came from a gory Mexican horror film, Santa Nico Pandemonium, that Tarantino had seen like on the shelves of the video store he worked at, and that's why he gave her name. She didn't have any choreography for the film, so it's all Salma Hayek. Again, she was terrified of snakes, but she did the role. So she's like, "How should I dance this?" Robert's like, "Hey, just dance to it the best way you can. Feel the music." And he did the same thing with Jessica Alba for Sin City, so she plays a stripper in there. The song she was supposed to dance to was Down in Mexico by the Coasters, but Rodriguez felt that After Dark was better, and he had Tito and the house band play it. Down in Mexico was actually used in another Tarantino film in the future. And we see this scene of them dancing. We also see some of the characters that were introduced earlier. Sex Machine was introduced, and he is played by Tom Savini. The way he's introduced cracks me up, as he goes and basically has this whip and takes a beer out of a guy's hand that's next to him. That beer, and the guy whose beer he took it from was actually the special effects director and supervisor in the film. He takes the beer and drinks it, and when the guy tries to come after him for the beer, he goes and shows him his crotch gun.
That's the best.
Which is like so hilarious. But we actually seen the gun before. You know where we saw it before, Tom?
I'm thinking in another Rodriguez film. Am I correct?
Yes. One part that was just priorly shot before this.
Desperado.
Yep. It's when she's looking through his guitar case, she pulls it out and is like, "What's this?" And he's like, "Oh, that saved my life many times." And just to go like this atmosphere of the bar before we go deeper into the after the steak dance, you have Chango beer, which is shown. Like there's neon lights of Chango beer, and Chango beer, of course, is in Desperado with the horrible beer they serve at the bar to both Tarantino there. But I love how they're like incorporating all their little things in there, not just with the people playing the characters, but like little tidbits and stuff in the film that, you could tell it's like they're both sprinkled their stuff into it to make it their own. And I love that fact. And, the bartender that served Tarantino's character Chango beer was played by Cheech Marin, who makes predominant roles in this film. So to go a little bit more on the revolver that we just talked about, Sex Machine's crotch revolver had been a source of much debate as a terrible idea because the recoil would hurt him. In an interview with James Rolfe, who's known as the Angry Video Game Nerd, Tom Savini justified the recoil issue by stating that during this time in the Army, in the Vietnam War, they tested the recoil of an M16 by placing it on various parts of the human body, including the chin and the crotch, with no injury whatsoever. So if you ever wonder, like, how's he fire that thing without getting hurt? Savini states that's the reason that it's been proven that it won't hurt you with, due to the Vietnam testing. He said it could be belt fed. One cylinder holds bullets and the other one holds the spent shells. It resembles to a revolver. The resemblance to a revolver is just cosmetic, and the cod piece itself might be reinforced and padded to reduce the recoil. So if you ever want to do a deep dive into can this thing shoot, now you know it can, and you won't get hurt from it. And like I said, Greg Nicotero is the actual special effects supervisor and makeup supervisor, because Savini still did special effects for this film, but he was acting. So this is his counterpart, by the way, from his company. He is the character that basically gets his beer stolen, and then he eventually, in a deleted scene, gets killed by Salma Hayek's character. So after the snake dance, and we see, and during the dance and the spilling of champagne, Tarantino, you could tell why he wrote himself into this role and probably why he chose Salma Hayek. His obsession with feet is on full force here, with her putting her foot in his mouth, which is like a Tarantino thing. And we eventually transition to Chet and the bartender, as well as the bouncer, coming and grabbing Richie and Seth because they beat him up outside. Chet, that is. to where Charlie puts a knife into Richie's hand, which causes him to bleed. He pulls it out and shoots the bartender, to where Seth kills the bouncer. And I love the fact when they shoot them and they're looking at Chet Chichmarin, and he just starts laughing, and they just blow him away, both of them. And they're like, oh, let's just be cool. Salma Hayek's character is on top of the table. She sees the blood, and then we see her turn, jump on Seth. You know, she basically she kind of looks like, I don't know if you remember these films, like the Alien characters from the TV series back in the day with the
Alienation?
Alienation, yes.
James Caan was in the movie.
Yeah. That's what she reminds me of. Like,
you're absolutely right. I see it.
Yeah, and she jumps on his back, on Richie's back, biting him in the neck, and he's like, the fucking bitch bit me. They throw her off, and then we see that, all hell breaking loose. They're attacked by, everybody in the bar is attacked by vampires as the strippers turn and say it's feeding time. Again, green blood is used for the vampires that they get shot because they want to make it past censors for the movie censors. And one of my favorite transitions, when all them turning into vampires, we then cut to the band, and the band is all vampires, but they're playing human body parts.
And they all like to turn inside out.
Yeah, as their instruments, which I thought was pretty cool. Some of the body parts was actually used by from other films by Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, which I thought was pretty hilarious. This whole scene is shot by Rodriguez by using a zoom lens, and he did it himself. He would frequently zoom in during takes to make it appear as if there was more camera setups. A technique he had developed from mariachi. Now, if you look at mariachi, there's a lot of close-ups, which I think is like really, like at the time when you watch it, it's like really shot really well for such a low budget film. And he used it in here, and he kind of that's kind of like the Robert Rodriguez signature, I would say, of his film. And this is how many jump cuts are in to do extreme close-ups, and that's like his signature, like I said. We then eventually see, the death of Richie as he dies, and Seth doesn't know what to do. They start killing off all the vampires in there. Sex Machine and Frost, we see the character of Frost introduced, even though he's not named. And we see awesome special effects. And what do you think of the special effects so far?
I still think they hold up great. I mean, they look great in then, and I think they look great now. Like, I rewatched it, and I think they held up a little bit better than like the Event Horizon graphics. But I think it's because you're in the midst of, I think Robert Rodriguez might be a little bit better of a director. I mean, I could be wrong than PW. But that being said, I think the graphics are really good.
Yeah, and we get one of the most iconic lines in the film. But before we get to that, Sex Machine is whipping the shit out of people with his whip. And when I was doing research for a film, I found out that the reason he was using a whip was because it was tribute to the Belmonts of the game Castlevania, which I thought was pretty awesome that they included that aspect. Like, Tarantino and Rodriguez are complete nerds. But I love the fact that they put video games into this movie, which I thought was awesome.
That is really cool.
And then we get the iconic scene of Salma Hayek standing over basically on the floor, George Clooney, and she says this famous line.
Welcome to slavery.
No, thanks. I already had a wife.
And that line was actually improvised by Clooney, which I think is pretty hilarious. There was a special makeup, effect that was done to one of the strippers. I don't know. So when they basically are on a standoff and you see the vampires walk over, you see a stripper with her, like a vampire with her stomach ripped open. And the reason for that was there was actually supposed to be a scene where that stomach was supposed to be a large mouth. And they were supposed to put a head from a biker that they cut off, and it was supposed to eat it. It was turned too graphic that Tarantino even said, I don't want to see it. You can see the scene, though, actually in the special edition DVD, which is kind of crazy. They also mentioned Peter Cushing in this film, part of the scene when they're talking about, they need crucifixes. And Scott tells him, oh, look around. There's sticks. You can just put two sticks together. And Sex Machine says, yeah, Peter Cushing did that all the time when they're trying to go through vampires. So after they kill the initial runs of vampires, we get the famous do you believe in vampires thing. But prior to that, this is another one I'm kind of skipping around here, but prior to that, we hear
Now let's kill that fucking band. I can do that.
And we see the band basically say, "Good night, motherfuckers," and then they explode.
That's the best.
But then we see the vampires. Are the vampires real?
We got a bunch of fucking vampires out there trying to get in here and suck our fucking blood. And that's it, plain and simple. I don't want to hear anything about, I don't believe in vampires. Because I don't fucking believe in vampires. What I believe in my own two eyes, and what I saw is fucking vampires. Now, do we all agree that what we are dealing with is vampires?
And I love that little dialogue there, like Clooney, because it's believable. Like, I don't believe in them, but I know what the fuck I saw. And they basically tell the characters all say, like, I believe in them, what I saw. And we, as we transition to, all the vampires are pretty much dead, the people who were bitten start to turn. And we see Sex Machine help out Kate, who's almost killed by a biker, I believe, that crawled on the floor, right, to bite her.
Yes.
He saves her. And he says, we have to kill the other people, stab him in the heart. So they go around stabbing the corpses that were attacked by the vampires. Kate sees a guy who looks normal and she can't do it. And so he wakes up and then she stabs the shit out of him. But as Sex Machine looks over to her, she kind of cost him, his life, because he gets bit by a vampire that steps up and bites him. He kills him, but he's bit and he covers it up. I love this whole transition of Savini turning, because after Sex Machine is turned, they're talking about what's next, what's the best way to handle things. And we get, Frost's story about how he would kill people in Vietnam. It's just so random. And I love the fact that he's just telling this story of how he would stab people. And he's like crouching down and doing the stabbing, and like they're just all these people are just like watching him.
And watching it this last time, I literally was laughing, going like, "Is this like?" But that's what was. Yeah, it's a cool scene because it's so out there in the movie. I like.
Yeah, and he's like, "I can come at me now," and then but I love it because while this is going on, Sex Machine is hearing voices as he's starting to turn into a vampire of saying, "Kill them, kill them." And eventually he turns and he attacks Frost and bites him after punching George Clooney in the face, pushing away Kate, and throwing Jacob. He bites Jacob in the forearm and throws him against the bar. And I like how Scott puts up his hands like he's gonna fight. Like, he does it like such a weak way. And Frost calls him out, "You bit me." And he's like, "What are you gonna do about it?" He's like, "Come on, Sex Machine."
That's the line right there.
And he turns, and before he turns, he just like flops his arm and smacks the hell out of Scott to knock him down. And then he just fixes his coat. And I just love the whole like fight between the two, because he just runs at him and he just he literally throws him like 50 feet through the door as there's bats outside the door of the bar banging on the door. And the bats all fly in, and you can see Frost has turned, and they run to the back. They run to the back here to save themselves while Jacob is under the bar. They think he's dead, and they're freaking out. They're like, "What are we gonna do?" They're finding all these things in the back, like from the past that truckers had left. They're thinking they're gonna die. The vampires are outside the door. Jacob revives himself and tapes his arm, and he finds a shotgun and a baseball bat and uses them as a cross as he goes to the back, which I thought was pretty cool. How he's using it to go to the back to protect himself. You also have to remember Jacob is a former preacher. When he gets to the back, he's basically convinced by George Clooney's character Seth to let's have one last stand against them. And the speech that Clooney gave, it's pretty funny because we just mentioned that Tarantino came off the famous film Pulp Fiction. Well, Julius's monologue in there, Ezekiel. He talks about Ezekiel, and I was struck down with furious anger.
Oh yeah,
go ahead, Tom, say it.
Great furious anger. Oh yeah, you know the whole thing. Oh yeah,
yeah. So he goes into that was supposed to be George Clooney's line in this film.
Really?
Yes, Tarantino wrote that monologue for the Seth character, but figured it would be better in Pulp Fiction. And I think Samuel L. Jackson pulls it off better than Clooney would.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that line pretty much is one of the makers in Pulp Fiction, where it would have been good in this movie, but I don't know if it would have been as memorable. You know what I mean? It would have been in this movie as a great line.
Yeah, and Tarantino says he got inspiration for that line and monologue from watching Sonny Chiba movies, who's actually, the street fighting man who would become more prominent later. Again, have a resurgence in Kill Bill, and then he was in Tokyo Drift 3. Tokyo Drift Fast and Furious 3, which I think is a good movie. So as they're going in the back, the main characters are trying to huddle and say, what they're going to do. Jacob Fuller makes it to the back. He busts through, gets through the door. He tells them he was bit and he's going to turn, but he can help fight with them. But he makes his family promise that they have to kill him if they want him to help, or he's going to kill himself now. They all agree. And I like how they use the tools, within that little room, because they've shown that truckers and bikers have been fed on for years, and there's crates of their supplies and whatnot. They find a crossbow, which Kate uses. They find super soakers and water balloons, and he basically blesses the water so it can be used as holy water, which I thought was awesome. They find what does he have, like a jack?
Yeah, that was the jack.
Like a jackhammer, basically.
Yeah, but then he put the stake at the end of it.
He cuts a stake and puts a stake into, so he can basically go and impale the vampires. And then he says his famous line as they're about to go on to battle. He basically says, "All right, vampire killers, let's go fucking kill some vampires." Again, showing his Clooneyisms. And the whole climax of the battle, I think, I love the way they have the shot when they open the door.
Oh yeah.
And you see all the vampires all transformed. And it was really interesting reading about this, because when you look at it, you see that there's a bunch of them. But due to the heavy number of special effects, the film had to be strictly budgeted to scenes would have been cut from it. That meant they only had 6 fully body vampire suits that could be used for the climax. So the climax of the film, actually, it was like dozens of vampires. And as you see in the film, there's a bunch of them. So the way they did this was they made dummies, and they used the dummies that exploded. They put them in the scene, in the background, to make it seem like there's a tons of vampires. But really, it's actually just dummies that were used for explosions. I thought that was pretty cool, and a great illusion by Robert Rodriguez. He also used cardboard cutouts as well to make it seem like there's a bunch of vampires. So that, great thinking and great illusion. Then we see the epic battle of them fighting with us, fighting, Sex Machine and fighting all the vampires. And Sex Machine turns into a rat. Or, they say it's a dog, but I think it's a rat. And I thought it was kind of funny doing the research for this, that the sounds he makes was actually Robert Rodriguez's baby son, Rocket.
Oh, really?
Who was learning to talk. And it was just sounds that he was making. So Robert Rodriguez recorded it and basically used it as the rat dogs sound effects, which is kind of funny.
That's great.
We eventually see, unfortunately, the death of Jacob as he turns. His son Scott kills him, and then Scott is killed because he's bitten up by the vampires, to where Kate kills him and the vampires. They're surrounded and they begin to shoot at the vampires, but they accidentally hit a wall, and then we see sunlight coming through, and they shoot the area around them so more holes in sunlight can come through until they're out of bullets. And then we hear Carlos, who's played by Cheech Marin, say, "Is anybody in there?" And they're like, "Shoot, let us out." To where him and his 2 bodyguards shoot up the doors and basically open it. And you see all the vampires see the sunlight, and they basically explode in flames. The funny part about this, Tone, is that the 2 bodyguards with Carlos are actually from Desperado. Christos is one of them, the bald-headed guy. He's the guy who fights his right-hand man's nephew.
Oh,
and he breaks his leg. He's like, if he can't find Christos, then I don't want him. And the other guy, Mike Moroff, who plays Manny in the film, is Shrug from Desperado. And if you remember, he's the guy who's like, he could be the bad guy. And he's like, huh? And he tries to shoot him. And then he's also the guy who he's like, hey, he comes out of his armored car, and he's like, hey, he shoots him. And he plays a hilarious character as Shrug. It's just kind of cool that Rodriguez had his boys kind of do small little roles in here.
Oh yeah,
and it kind of ties everything together. Cheech Marin's character Carlos was actually originally lined up to be played by Eric Estrada.
Oh Lord!
But Cheech took the spot because I don't know if it's probably Estrada wanted more money or whatnot. I don't know, but he wasn't used. And we get our famous scene where after they kill them, Cheech Marin asks, like, were they psychos or something?
Oh, were they psychos?
They look like psychos? Is that what they look like? They were vampires. Psychos do not explode when sunlight hits them. I don't give a fuck how crazy they are.
And just like that, scene cracks me up. Carlos basically gives him, money, gives him his ride. Kate offers to go along, but he says, I'm a repulsive asshole, but I'm not that big of an asshole. Estrada found out he had to wear a shirt. Maybe.
It could be.
Yeah, maybe that's why he didn't do it. And then the characters ride off, and as they cut away, you see the bar is basically on top of a temple, a Mexican temple or an Aztec temple with all the vampires and bloods leading into the cabins and all the wreckage of all the trucks and motorcycles they have feasted on from people before are in the ruins. And that's how the film ends. And like, I love the way the film ends. Again, awesome soundtrack to lead to end the film. Just to me, this film's like a roller coaster. It's two different films in one. You have a horror film in the second half. In the beginning, you have a crime drama, in the beginning. And to me, it's like, it still holds up to this day. Like I loved every minute of it when I watched it.
Last shot of the movie is my favorite of the movie. That shot you just explained, because it explains everything. If they would have saw that from the outside, they never would have went inside. But nobody sees it from the outside because it's in the back and it looks like a cool vampire temple, like kind of like in an Interview with the Vampire when they go again with Antonio Banderas in his lair. And it's got all the holes with the different vampires in it. This is like that version of it, but in this movie. So, again, as you stated, great movie.
Yeah, I know I gave a lot of detail, like the scenes and whatnot, but it's just a fun film to talk about. And if you haven't seen it, like if you're thinking about it and like describe something that you want to see, definitely check it out. It's vulgar, very vulgar, no doubt about it. Very bloody, but it's 90s. It has a killer soundtrack, great actors, great dialogue funny dialogue for a horror movie. And like I said, it's just two different movies all in one, and they blend so well together. This film was, very impactful on me in horror because it was another aspect of me looking at a different way horror is told. As a kid, we were used to the old John Carpenter films, the Exorcist films that we talked about earlier. And this is just a new take on it, along with Scream. And like, it's kind of hilarious that Scream and this movie came out the same year.
It really is.
But
definitely.
But yeah, so that's our film breakdown. Tellen, you want to get into some critical reception and fan theories?
Let's get to it.
All right, let's move on to our next segment.
You know that fat cocksucker says I look like the Shah of Iran?
Who does? Tony. I never got that at all.
I love that line.
Great.
So the film made $25 million on a $19 million budget. Of course, it didn't make a lot of money at the box office because it wasn't really known how to promote it. It's considered a cult classic now and a tribute to the horror genre, like we explained. Roger Ebert was a huge fan of the film and gave it 3 stars. This movie spawned a sequel and a prequel, as well as a television series that Rodriguez helped produce and direct. Danny Trejo is the only character to appear in all the films. Charlie apparently is a big character. It also spawned a video game for Windows in 2001. I happened to see that, or play it, but now it makes me want to go back and look it up. See,
I'm curious to see about that.
Yeah. So 2 fan theories I have here, and I'm going to read them to you. The first fan theory is that Frost, who's played the character, the character of the muscular man, was already a vampire via the house painter on Reddit. He says, it's funny how long the show really went on before the vampires were revealed. These devils blend in for their own good reasons and devious tactics. Particularly, the entire titty twister was housed with vampires before the Gecko brothers and the hostage family even arrived. Some humans were present, but they didn't outnumber the vamps and were never going to. But let's start with Frost. For years, I've been wondering what he meant about what he saw in Vietnam. He made it seem like he encountered something out of the ordinary in that specific time period. But it's obvious it might have been a vampire, a nest of vampires, maybe, considering that's what the movie is about anyway. But my thing is, how would Frost prevail from this horror? It's pretty sure it caught him off guard, something that he didn't understand. And he had no chance of defeating that type of threat at that moment. I would imagine he was overpowered and the vampire turned him instead of just slaying him. Frost barely gave any shock or empathy in the fact that they were actually around after Richie got bit. It's like he was already just there for the party. He could have managed to keep the vamp condition in check for many years, or just in cahoots with the titty twister all along. This could also be backed by the fact that he didn't show any real worry or panic after getting bit by Sex Machine, but rather annoyance. After he taunted Sex Machine before questionably throwing him through a wall, releasing more vampires into place, and somehow in seconds he's already a vampire. This never made sense to me since every victim turned a little later, but Frost turned immediately after getting bitten. Maybe his cover was blown, so he just plain transformed. His Vietnam story right before this happens was an allusion to the vampires. Frost was always mysterious and sly. What do you think about that?
This might be my favorite theory of all of them that we've done so far. I like it. I could see it. Him throwing them into the wall and unleashing all those vampires. That's what kind of could make it seem true. I think it's a solid. What do you think?
So I think it's like, in theory it is, but I think the one big hole that pokes, that is the character of Santa Nico, who, according to the way they worship her, was probably the head.
Yeah.
But her dying and him being okay with it, to me, is like,
you're right.
Maybe that wasn't, but I can see it. And I just love the fact when his character gets killed in the film, he gets scared and basically just melts away, which is totally ironic because he's a big tough guy. And then when he's a vampire, he doesn't want to get killed. So he just melts away.
Oh, yeah.
But that's probably the best fan theory we've read on this show.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
And here's another one. I'm sure Brian will love this connection. This is a possible connection between From Dusk Till Dawn and The Killer Crow. Fans of Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino's first genre collaboration, From Dusk Till Dawn, may be familiar with Frost, the African-American war vet played by Fred Williamson. He recounts a war story to the survivors of the massacre at the Titty Twister before getting bitten by Sex Machine. Tarantino fans may also be aware of the director's unrealized project, Killer Crow, a war film with a primarily African-American cast. Quentin had this to say about the project in an interview with The Root. There's something about this that would suggest a trilogy. My original idea for Inglourious Basterds way back when was that this would be a huge story that included the smaller story that you saw in the film, but also followed a bunch of African-American troops, and they had been fucked over by the American military and kind of go apeshit. They basically, the way Aldo Raines, Brad Pitt, and the Bastards are having an Apache resistance. The black troops go on an Apache warpath and kill a bunch of white soldiers and white officers on the military base, and just making a warpath to Switzerland. It will be called Killer Crow or something like that. While Killer Crow takes place during World War II and Williamson's characters fought in Vietnam, I don't think there would be much of a stretch to imagine that the two stories are being linked in some way. Perhaps in the same way that True Romance is linked to Inglourious Basterds by the way of Lee/Donnie Donowitz. Lee is filming a Vietnam War film during True Romance, by the way. If there's a connection, that would put Killer Crow in the same microverse as From Dusk Till Dawn, Kill Bill, and Grindhouse. Though that may necessarily contradict the microverse theory, Killer Crow and Inglourious Basterds. What do you think about that?
Interesting. Definitely interesting. I like the expansiveness of it. I like the time put into it. I don't know if I don't like it as much as the first one, but it's still interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think this one's more of a stretch.
Yeah.
But I can see Tarantino adding aspects of a film that wasn't done. Also, I also just think he probably did the dialogue of John Williamson, for one, to show how much of a badass the character was, Ross. And true. I think also just to be like, a little bit of comedic effect, because I mean that part is pretty funny, where he's like doing the stabbing motion, everybody's just around him, like surrounding him, like,
oh yeah.
You know. But yeah, I mean those are two decent theories. I think the first one was probably holds more water than the second one, but those are some fan theories, man. So final thoughts, Tony. All this together, what do you think?
I'm thinking we're lining up for a great movie. Definitely a movie that you're going to want to watch, I think, with some friends, and you're going to want to have a good time. And that's what the movie is as a whole. You know, it's not scary, but it's like cool scary. Like, it's a cool, as you stated, very vulgar. But then again, what isn't from Tarantino that you're getting involved with that isn't highly vulgar in some way, shape, or form? But then again, I think that's in the title too, From Dusk Till Dawn. I mean, you know, kind of what you're getting into, maybe. Overall, I love the movie. It's really, really good. The casting for me, again, Danny Trejo, this is where I'm getting one of my huge introductions from him besides Desperado. Just great all around movie.
Yeah, I love Danny Trejo. I mean, he was in Blood In, Blood Out. He was in that movie with Eric Roberts, Midnight Train, I think it was, where he plays the boxer.
Yes.
Yeah, Danny Trejo is an awesome human being too. Like, he's a legit treasure. Like, he's a person that's very humble. You know, he's one of my favorite people. And one of these days, hopefully, you know, in the future, we can get him to come on and talk for a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that would be, you talk about a dream.
Yeah,
dream come true. Awesome. Real quick before we go about Danny Trejo, there's a horror movie from 1987 called The Hidden.
Mm-hmm.
You ever see The Hidden?
No, I have not.
Oh my God, we gotta watch that. We'll get to that at a later date though. But I was curious. It's a good deep cut. But he plays like a 1 second he's in jail in it, which is funny because sadly he was in jail before, but he's playing someone in jail in this movie. But awesome actor and cool to show his range in so many different things.
Yeah. Awesome. He also has his own taco place and a donut place, and I love tacos and donuts.
My wife was always showing me the pictures of this place, and talk about a dream, then I would fall to my knees. It's kind of like when I sat in that reclining chair when we went and seen Iron
Claw.
Yeah, and Evil Dead. No, Evil Dead.
Oh, that.
And when I would never had sit in a seat like that where it like reclined, I had but that was what I'd be like in Danny Trejo. But great movie, my man. Great movie.
For sure. If you haven't seen Dusk Till Dawn, check it out. It's on HBO Max. If for free, you can watch it there. You can also rent it. I think like there's DVD copies out there for $5. You also have the trilogy DVDs. You know, they're like go for $10-15. It's definitely worth to watch. Give it the respect it deserves and check it out. With that, we got 2 more segments. It's gonna be quick ones. We're gonna go into our next segment of Coming Soon.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Coming soon.
Próximamente.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
So coming soon, this is precursor. There will be no show next week, and that is my fault. I have to get my computer flushed out. I run a water-cooled computer, so it has to be flushed out every year, and I'm already a little bit behind on that. It takes about a week or so to get everything flushed out and cleaned, and then I'm getting it upgraded in certain areas. So I have to take it to the shop tomorrow. So after today, I won't be able to do any videos or anything like that, pods, for at least a week or so. So we're going to take next week off, and we'll be returning on the 16th. And Tone, tell us what we're talking about on the 16th.
Really quick, we should have planned that better. When you said we weren't going to have a show, I should have been Yump or no, like Richie instead of. But we got coming up down the hatch. The next one, we're going to be talking about La Bamba, and to kind of correlate with the fact that they're releasing a brand new musical biography by Bob Marley. We decided we were going to pick into the vaults of amazing musical biographies and bring up one that means quite a lot to us. And well, La Bamba it is, and it's going to be amazing.
Yes, and the character of Bob.
We might spend 7 hours just on Bob. No, I'm kidding. It won't be 7 hours. But Bob is great.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to La Bamba. So on the 16th, we'll be coming back with La Bamba, and then we'll go for a show every week after that to continue, as we're trying to do weekly shows. If you guys like the way the format of the show is set up, let us know in the comments, or let us know in at Twitter. You can find me at Lil Yumper or at the show Pod on Twitter. Bob or Bobbo. Bobbo. Or let Tony know at the Sugar Baggy on Twitter. And, you know, as just leading into our next transition, we're going to go into the Sugar Baggy song pick of the week. The Sugar Baggy soundtrack pick of the week.
All right. So what we have here tonight, first of all, here before I get started, is we're going to go into the Howard Stern Private Parts album soundtrack. What I remember most about this, and I had to really, really pull from, well, folks, I had to pull from a VHS cassette to show you what I'm about to show you here, right here. When this album came out and movie came out, MTV did this special. It was called like Howard Stern's Private Party Parts. It had everybody was there from LL Cool J to Lenny Kravitz to Jane's Addiction. It was a big thing. The soundtrack itself, so many great songs. Just this last week, Green Day came out with a new album, but on this soundtrack, they do an awesome cover of the Kinks. Tired of Waiting for You. Really, 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 really good. Lots of good songs. And, well, I think it's a good soundtrack. And if it's been a while since you've checked it out and the movie itself, it all works really well together. So please do it.
Yes. Good, great soundtrack. I do love the fact that in that clip you shown, Howard Stern looks like he is taking wardrobe from the Matrix with his big trench coat and sunglasses. Yes. Brian cracked me up with this comment. I'm going to get screwed, blued, and tattooed for that episode La Bamba. Yes, Brian.
Yes, please do. We all might.
But great pick, Tone. Private Parts is a film that I remember watching, and I watched it actually on USA, and they had the cutaways of Howard Stern coming in to talk about parts they couldn't show on TV, and he's like, buy the DVD. You know, it's always stuck with me. Great soundtrack. Film's crazy, but that's our show.
My introduction, one of my early introductions to Giamatti.
Oh yeah, Big Vomit.
Big Vomit. You know, great role. But and even Stern, you know, he doesn't do a bad job for what he's doing in the movie. Shockingly, like, and you know,
it's an entertaining movie.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I mean,
never read the book either. So
no, I never read the book.
No,
I know MSS is probably a huge fan of the film. We should ask him. Maybe one day we'll do the Private Parts and have him come in.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
I know he'd be down for that. But that's our show for the week, guys. Thanks so much for staying with us. I know this was a long one. We did a deep dive in Dusk Till Dawn. Shout out to Keelin over at Razzball. Check her out and all her articles at Razzball. You can follow them on Twitter at Razzball. Also, just want to say shout out to Brian and the Drafty Show. They just had a great episode of recasting Star Wars with SNL characters with Chirizi, Baloney from the Bums, and not Larry from Twitterverse. And it was a hilarious episode. They had some good picks, so check that one out. That will be on our YouTube page as well. And my man Tony has been killing it with the hookup on music. He's been dropping great reviews and little sound cuts. Every time, like when I'm working, Tony, I throw your pod up to have it on to my work, and I just listen to it. Cracks me up. And also Bruhan Luke just had a great interview with Roger. I forget his last name. What's Roger's last name? I should have brought this down. But he actually, the man who traveled to I think 61 college football games through the country. He did an interview with him, and it was a great. Luke knocked it out of the ballpark with that interview.
Was really, 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 really great interview. Really great interview.
Yeah, it was a great interview. Luke Road Rogers, his name is alias. He did a great job for that. So check that out. That's actually on YouTube right now, along with this. Be sure, if you guys are into the audio version, check out the video version, because we do show a lot of visuals in there, and it plays into the sound clips I play. But thanks, guys, for watching. We will see you in 2 weeks, and be sure to check us out at The Pod Show on Twitter, where Tony's putting up some great polls, and we got a lot of movie trivia in there. So take it easy, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks Thanks for listening to the At the Show podcast, a Sadistic Penguin Studios production.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?